All right, welcome to the Business of Coaching workshop, where we dig into the strategies and stories behind successful coaching businesses. Today, I'm thrilled to have Josh Riggs with us. Josh is a seasoned fitness entrepreneur with over 8 years in the industry. He's the co-owner of multiple gym locations, including Dedicated Health and West Indy Barbell. Get those right? Beyond the gym floor, Josh serves as the COO of ARIA, Area CRM, a platform designed to streamline operations for fitness professionals. He's also a I just learned this apparently, two-time best-selling author and the host of the Gym Owners Guild podcast, where he shares unfiltered insights into building a thriving fitness business. Josh's journey from online coaching to owning multiple gyms and leading into tech solutions offers lessons for anyone in the coaching realm. Let's get started, man. Great to have you on the show, and excited to hear more about your story. Just starting off, for those that aren't familiar with who you are, can you walk us through your transition from online coaching and renting gym space to owning multiple gyms?
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of I feel like it's partly stereotypical with some twists. So I started in the fitness industry same way everyone else did, wanting to help people lose weight and not having any idea about business whatsoever. And I was working a full-time job, but I've always had a passion for helping people, live their best lives. And I've always said that fitness was the gateway drug to success. Anytime someone can get their body right, they can get their mind right, they can do amazing things. So I started doing some personal training on the side, and I was renting space from a local gym that I was working out at. And at the time, I was working crazy hours. I was working from I would go into my full-time job, which I won't say the name of it because I don't want to get sued, but it rhymes with Walmart. And I would start, I would start my day there. It was a 45-minute drive there. I would work from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m., 45-minute drive back. I would sleep for maybe 3 or 4 hours, have my first client, and then work until I had to leave for work again. I did that for about a year straight. Couldn't take it anymore, so I decided I was going to dive headfirst into personal training. Went headfirst into it. Got a pretty big book of business. Definitely enough to sustain myself, but not enough to open a gym with. And then the people that ran the gym came to me and said they were closing. So I had the choice of giving up or trying to pivot. So whenever they were closing, they were going to give the business back to the original owner. I had no money, but I went to the original owner. I was like, "Here's my 5-year game plan. This is how I can make this place profitable. If you give me a chance, you'll never have to deal with this place again." The dude took a gamble on me, and that's how I got my first gym. And from there, it was just scaling in systems and helping other people till eventually I was like, "Hey, I'll scale your gym too, and I'll help you with those systems if you give me a little bit of equity." And that's how I got my other location.
What are some of the lessons you've learned along the way? I was just talking about this with the guest I had last week, Aram, that you tell this story and everything just kind of fits into place and it creates this nice narrative. But I have to imagine you had some lessons learned and some setbacks. Can you share what some of those moments were like for you and what you've learned that you carry forward now with you?
I would say the biggest lesson is everything is a setback. Life is what happens when you make other plans, right? It all sounds like whenever you tell a story in hindsight, it all sounds like there was some grand vision, some
Mm-hmm.
amazing this was everything went according to plan every step of the way. But in all honesty, I knew nothing about business, so everything I learned was just from banging my head against the wall. Basically, I call it um, the boots on the ground method. Basically, I would just know I needed to do something. So I would start at it as hard as I could until I hit my first roadblock. And then I would devote all of my resources in learning how to overcome that one roadblock. A perfect example of this is I actually wasn't a software guy at all. It was something that was very foreign to me. I was really big into you know, movement patterns, losing weight, making the best workout programs, things along those lines. However, being a one-man show or having a very small staff, they just so many limitations, admin limitations kept coming up. Just basic stuff you need to run your business, even like having a 24/7 key to get in and out of the gym, because we have that at our gym, was all things I didn't know. So right off the bat, I had to figure out how am I going to get people in the door, because they had a system before, but it was trash. basically you would scan in and you'd wait there for 6, 7 minutes before it unlocked the door. That's not an exaggeration. Um, that can't keep happening. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, the way I would tackle anything and keep moving forward was I would go as hard as I could until I hit my first roadblock. Then I would take a step back, assess the situation, see what the root cause of my problem is, and then devote all resources, all of them, until I could overcome that one hurdle. And then after you overcome that, it's just skyrocketing from there.
That is easier said than done. As a small business owner, in particular, many solopreneurs, you're faced with seemingly an endless number of problems. How do you identify? How do you make it seem like there's one thing to work on?
So this is obviously my opinion, and for me, and it's worked very well. In my opinion, there's really only three major things, right? And almost everything is outside of that is noise. One is fulfillment issues. Two is sales issues, and three is team issues. So basically, first thing I do whenever I reach a roadblock, I'm really big on data too. That's an important part of this whole process. If you're not tracking your data, you can't do this. So if I find myself setting goals that aren't getting met repetitively over and over again, like for example, say I had the goal of a 40K month was the goal, and I'm constantly falling short at a 35K month, then I know as like the CEO and leader of the team, it's my job to actually step back. And I need to look at this from a 30-foot view. And I'll actually assess each one of those buckets. And there might be problems in each one of those buckets, right? But once you find, and sometimes they're blaringly obvious, but if they're not, what I like to do is list the top three that I can find in each one of those buckets. And then I'll label each one on what can I do fast, what's going to make the biggest impact, and what's going to require the least amount of change. I'll rate each one of those issues down on that, and whichever one has the highest score that I can do it fastest, has the least amount of change, and will have the highest impact, that's my first priority. And then I
That
just work my way
is
back from there.
so powerful. That might be one of the most useful nuggets anybody's shared on this show, because it's such a challenging problem, I think, to figure out what to work on. So, I mean, you've got two amazing insights there. That process for identifying what to work on, and then the idea of focusing all of your resources on that one problem until it's solved, and then moving on to the next one is, I mean, that will transform anybody's business, I think, if you can apply that consistently over time.
The hardest part of it, I think, is as a small business, I'm sure you seen this too. Momentum's what we got rewarded for at first, like constantly moving, constantly doing stuff, constantly like trying to move the bar forward. And for this process to really work, and I still struggle with it, you really do have to stop. Like you have to step back. You literally have to get away from the business because if you're in the weeds, you can't see things objectively. So the only way I can do this is, and it took me a while to be able to do this, is I literally will pull away for a week, which is so hard because I'll be in the middle of fire. Like nothing's working, everything's on fire. It's like that dog meme where he's drinking coffee and it's like there's fire all around him. But you literally have, I have to pull away, look at all the data, look at all the elements, and sit down and think about this. And sometimes it will be a whole week of nothing, just like of deep thinking, processing, and strategizing on each one of those things. So it's definitely an easier said than done, but it's helped me a lot.
I was just talking about this with my team today, that every once in a while I get this voice in the back of my head that I'm wondering, like, am I just polishing a turd here, or am I actually moving forward in a meaningful direction? And I think sometimes when you're in that momentum phase and you're just doing and working and trying to fix the problem, I think you often get into a situation where you're like I said, polishing a turd, and then you have to step back and realize, like, is this actually what I need to be working on, or is this the right problem to be solving? Because if you are just kind of refining a bad process, or you're not actually fixing the root of the problem, you can spend a ton of energy going down those rabbit holes of chasing something that's not actually what you should be working on, that's not going to have the most impact. And I also really love that piece that you mentioned there about the one that's going to be the least amount of change, which I think is a cost that most people don't recognize, that, you know, if you can change something for the better, that it's inherently a good thing. But I don't know if you have any perspective or metrics on like how much improvement you need to get to make a change, but you need like 3-4x the improvement on something to justify the cost of a change, because any change is gonna cost some period of time. Either you're adjusting or just investing in building the new process. So like are there times where you've had to say, this, I know this will be better, but it's not better enough?
Oh, 100%. And I want to make this clear that this is not my thing. This is something I heard on a podcast. But the data sounds, it's close enough for me to use it in my own decision framework.
Okay.
I use the rule of 20%. So any business that is left to its own devices and has a profitable, semi-profitable business model has the potential to grow at least like 20% year, like every 2 years or so, just if you keep this steady trajectory. But that's only if you keep everything the same and you have the same process that implements exactly the same way every single time. If you change something, then I'm going to lose that 20%. So basically, I use the rule of 20%. If I don't see at least a 20% increase in whatever change this is going to give me, rather that be one of those three buckets that I was talking about, then I really don't mess with it. The only flip side to that is if it's extremely detrimental. For example, if I have like a coach that's drastically underperforming, I have clients constantly complaining about them, like, yes, that change is going to hurt, but some changes, like,
Mm.
that needs to be made kind of thing. So I basically filter it through like, is this going to give me more than at least a 20% increase in productivity, 20% increase in time back, or 20% increase in profit? Which I'm a big advocate for looking at all three of those because they're all separate buckets, but they all have different kinds of ROIs with them.
Mm.
And I feel like most people I talk to struggle with thinking of not only how can we make more revenue, but also how can we get back more time? Because more time can equal more revenue if you reassess how you're actually spending your time anyway.
Mm.
So basically, that's how I break it down, if that helps answer your question at all.
Absolutely. And I think a good segue into talking a little bit more about area and the CRM that you've developed, because especially if we talk to a lot of very, very new coaches, so they're at the stage where it's often just spreadsheets and Google Docs and WhatsApp and Instagram stuff. We work predominantly on the fulfillment side with Turnkey Coach, but on the CRM side, how does a coach decide, when do you think is the right time for a coach to invest in that kind of change? Because I think that often feels like an overwhelming investment. It's hard to see the 20% growth when you look at, if a coach who's used to working out in gyms is now signing up for a CRM, which, well, isn't that what big businesses use? How do you talk through that kind of decision-making process and rationalize implementing and maybe first off, what is a CRM?
So very good point. Let's start with that, and we'll work our way to when it's a good time to change. So
Mm.
a CRM is basically a tool that you use that helps you manage your relationship with customers or potential customers. Is the entire purpose of it. If an CRM is set up properly and utilized properly, it's going to reward you in several different ways. Not only is it going to help you drive more traffic, get more leads, but it's also going to help you have deeper and more meaningful relationship with your clients because you'll be able to stay on track of each interaction you have with them. You have to have some kind of system in place for this. Community in relationships can happen organically at first, but as you grow and scale, that doesn't happen as much just because of the bandwidth humans have. If you have 10 people, you can probably remember every single one of their birthdays. So it might not be easy, but you can. But if you have 25, 30 people, it's next to impossible, especially if you're a one-man show. So what a CRM is going to do is basically bridge that gap and make it a lot easier through automations or through reminders to make sure that you're staying on top of each client, and on top of the sales side, making sure you're not losing any leads that are potential new clients coming through the door. As far as when is a good time to start using one, there's really two ways to look at this. And in my personal opinion, I'm a big advocate, the sooner the better. Uh, and here's my reasoning behind this. Because at the end of the day, if your goal is to scale your business to a fairly high degree, I would say 10K a month up, which most coaches I talk to, that's a general goal. They want to get to 10K. You're eventually going to need systems and processes in place. Now, if you implement it from the very beginning and having systems and processing in place at the very beginning, there's that 20% isn't 20% of 10K a month in systems and processes is a huge amount. That's a huge amount of change.
Hmm.
20% of a one client is not as big of a change. So as you scale,
I see what
the
you're
more
saying.
people you bring on, the harder it's going to be for you to pivot and change.
Hmm.
And that's what we run into a lot in this kind of industry. We have people out there who's been doing the wrong thing for a long time, not
Hmm.
necessarily the wrong thing, but a more inefficient way of doing things for a long time. And trying to transition to this new thing is a lot bigger of a cost because you already have things in place, right or wrong, they're already in place. And now you have to redo all of that versus doing it from the very beginning. There's next to no cost to doing it. Yes, there's cost to start it, like the actual monetary,
Sure.
but as you grow and scale, it grows with you versus against you and having to do it later. So, in my opinion, as soon as possible.
Mm.
Now, on the flip side of that, if you're a bigger business and you finally got to the point where you're making a decent amount of revenue and you've realized that your systems and processes aren't quite cutting it now for you, then I would say at that point in time, the sooner you can do it, the better. And I would suggest you do the same thing I just did. This is what I do with my clients whenever they're asking me questions about what should they switch to this or not. Literally run the same assessment. If your bottleneck is systems and processes, or you're losing through retention, or you're losing leads to the door, then it's time to go ahead and make that transition. Because yes, it's going to hurt, but it's going to hurt a lot more if you're not growing at all.
Mm. You mentioned something interesting there where you talked about scaling, eventually maintaining community and managing human connection is hard to manage organically, but it almost seems like a oxymoron that you're using automation and technology to sort of create community and human connection. How do you differentiate, or how do you think through balancing technology and automation with managing human connection that being authentic?
So one thing I want to specify here is there's a lot of things in your business that should be automated. A lot of things. The onboarding process, uh, moving people into different kind of sections in the pipelines, things along those lines. One thing that should never be automatized is human interaction. It should be systematized. So the way I like to set up CRMs is not to send a message out to a client telling them happy birthday, but instead it's set up to remind me or one of my staff members that it is this client's birthday and we need to do something for it. So the way I make sure that we keep the organic side and the relationships true is we still send those messages. It's still our hands on those keyboards, still our hands writing those cards, but the system's going to remind us. And I always like to talk about bandwidth. I'm a huge advocate for monitoring your own bandwidth. Everybody only has a certain amount of bandwidth they can give, no matter how much you want to try to work your butt off. Like you'll reach a point where you just can't fit anymore. If all you have to remember is to check, hey, I have these things I need to do, the system's saying it's this person's birthday, this person just had an anniversary, this person just, went and got married. All I have to do is check this list, and then all I have to do is go in and truly encourage and congratulate whoever that person is.
Mm. Especially, I mean, that resonates with me, especially with this AI era that we're in, and so much of a push towards mimicking human interaction, really. That I think my perception is that it's commoditizing much of the template and sort of cookie cutter approach to the strength and conditioning world, and it's only putting more value on the actual genuine human connection. And to me that resonates, because, and it's what we're doubling down with on turnkey coach as well, is that yes, we want to automate as much as possible so that you reach the limit of your time being spent on the actual human connection piece of it, and genuine human relationship. What would you say, or how would you describe that? What Aria is, Aria or Aria? Sorry,
It's Aria.
Aria. What are some examples of how Aria enables a coach to better or spend more of their bandwidth on the human connection piece and less on administration or remembering things?
Yeah, so the I'm a big advocate for customer journeys. I'm a huge advocate for the moment someone signs up, you should know what their next 90 days look like. 100%. So something that I've done in Aria is I've made an entire workflow that automates the 90-day customer journey for our clients. And the way it does that is our coaches basically there's different points in the 90 days where our coach will log into their dashboard and they'll have this task list. And the coach knows their job is they have to complete this task list every day. Like that's their job. And as the person overseeing it, I can see if they've done it or not. So, Big Brother's watching. But the task might say like, hey, it's week 3 of Stacy's 90-day journey. It's time to send her a handwritten card. So they'll do that. Or it's time to send a congratulation text. Jessica just made it to 14 workouts or something like that. Constantly reminding our coaches to touch point with all these different clients to make sure that no one slips through the cracks. Everyone's getting that personal, individualized attention, and we're the ones personalizing that message. So we're not going to send some cookie cutter like, hey, you made it 3 workouts, good job. We're going to be like, hey, last night you hit 315 on deadlift, and that was absolutely awesome. Congratulations on 3 weeks. So that's one way that we do it. As far as like the actual automation goes, there's some day-to-day things that happen in business that's super important, like KPI tracking. Like that should be automated as much as possible. I'm a big advocate, you should be able to log into your CRM, get a really good glimpse of what your business is doing, and you really shouldn't have to be doing too much to see that. Most of the bandwidth when it comes to KPI should be given to making decisions with it. Like, okay, this is my lagging KPI. What do I need to do? Versus like, how do I even find out what my show rates are? That should not be a factor. So a lot of it's basically helping by deciding what can be automated, something you don't have to do anything with, and what can be systematized so that it's repeatable but still personalized.
So shifting gears a little bit to content creation, you've got pretty prolific start with 2 books and a podcast. What motivated you to start putting your content out into the world?
So, full transparency, I am a big ag. So I do my content kind of weird. Most content is used for promotional or lead generation, things along that. Mine's actually because I hate journaling and I wanted to document my life.
Okay.
So my my decision to make a podcast or make any kind of content really is because when I was starting, as I mentioned, I learned by banging my head against a wall. And a lot of the times, a lot of the issues I was running into, I couldn't find any help with. And if I could find help with it, someone wanted astronomical amounts of money for it. And I was just starting. I had none of that. So me making content was one so that I can look back at it later and not have to learn the same lesson twice. I can be like, oh yeah, I already did this, so I have a trail of what I've done. 2, it's because if anyone else is hitting these milestones and not sure what to do, I'm not saying I have the best approach, but maybe it might spark something for them to get past it as well. So mine's more of a documentary and a journal than it is an actual like platform to try to receive leads. Now, granted, some people have seen what I did, they liked it, they came in and asked for help, which, is awesome, but that's never been the intent of it.
You're not like measuring traffic and conversion rates and things like that.
Nope,
Yeah.
not really. I will say I use blogs for my gym, and that works really well. But as far as like anything outside of that, no, it's just me yelling at me in the past and the future.
So you're also mentoring other professionals. When you talk to them about content creation, do you have advice for how to put themselves out to the different platforms and use that as part of their business, or is that something you just tell you give similar advice, like use it as your journal?
It depends on your avatar. I don't help coaches who help coaches, to be clear. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but if you're, in the fitness industry and you're trying to use content to um, get leads or clients from your content. I do have some frameworks that have worked really well for me because I've used them for the gym. And I kind of have that in a separate bucket. It's not really like my personal content. For that particular thing, I always recommend always remember first you need to know who you're talking to. So make it very cut and dry who your client avatar is. A lot of issues I find is people are too broad, and on the internet, broad gets you nowhere. So I have a very detailed client avatar. Her name's Debbie. She's lovely. She's a great lady. She's a 45 to 55. She's been in healthcare her whole life, and she's always put everyone before her. So I know exactly who I'm talking to. So all of my content that is used in the fitness side to draw people in for my gyms, I just imagine I'm having a conversation with Debbie and I filter it through that.
Mm.
On top of that, I always remember that my content is about my avatar and my clients, and it's always trying to celebrate something they've done. So if you go to like my personal Facebook feed, which is what I use to promote dedicated mostly, um, I don't really do much of my personal business like ARIA stuff on there. You'll notice that every post I make is talking about some amazing thing that my clients have done, and I don't even say anything about me. Like I don't say like I helped them do this. I just talk about how amazing it is that Emily just ran 3 marathons. Like that's astonishingly awesome. Or I'll
Mm.
talk about how someone just got a PR. I don't even mention where they did it. I don't mention how. It's just all about them. And I think that's something you have to be all or nothing in. Like there's no gray area in social media. It's go hard, go all in. And if you have any gray area, then you're probably just going to filter through the cracks and disappear. So that's why the loudest voices always get heard. So go all in on whatever decision you make.
That's a really great point on the level of detail that you talked about on your avatar, because a common problem I hear, or hesitation from coaches that are wrestling with social media or whatever content they're putting out, is that they've got this voice in their head that everybody's already said it, or there's concern about what some expert is going to think about what they said, or whether they're, or they'll work on crafting the perfect message because they don't want to say something that, one of their followers that isn't an avatar of theirs, but it's somebody they know will see it. And so there's all this kind of hesitation and, oh, but if I say it this way, then that person, but what you're describing is like a very specific conversation with a very specific person, and you don't care about what anybody else. I mean, it's great if you have other followers, and obviously that can have an impact to somebody who's not that avatar. But to me, the most powerful piece is that it just makes the noise in your head go away, and you're just able to focus, kind of like your other decision making frameworks on fixing one problem. You're able to focus on having one conversation instead of 10 different conversations in your head with a bunch of people that you're not trying to connect with.
Yeah, it's been a game changer for me for sure.
So we started this podcast because we kept hearing these common questions of how much should I charge, and how do I get more clients? I'm curious, with your work through the FitPro Collective, what common challenges do you see coaches facing, and how do you guide them through those obstacles?
So do you mean specifically on like pricing and things along those lines?
Those are the two that I'm hearing. I'm curious, like what you hear. Maybe if
Mhm.
they're the same, great. But yeah, I'm just curious what are common problems you hear.
I think across the industry, it's always the two things. I'm not getting enough leads, and I'm not making enough money.
Yeah.
Um, so with both of those things, there's so many different buckets and branches. That's something that really you have to like break down where you're at. A lot of times I find it comes down to one or two things. Your retention sucks, um, which is normally the problem, or you're not charging enough. So, and a lot of people always ask me like, how should I know what to charge? Like, what's too much? What's too little? And there's a lot of people out there that will tell you that your market doesn't matter. I'm going to be honest with you. They're liars. Like, your market does matter. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. Like, if you're in a place where the average income is like 30K a year, you can't charge like, I don't know, $900 a month and
Right.
it works. So you do have to take some market factors in consideration. Not drastically, just some.
Mm.
But the main goal is, one, what's your CAC? How much does it cost you to actually get customers? That's super important to know. You have to know that right off the bat. Two, um, once you have customers, what's your cost of fulfillment? Super important to know. And then from there, what's your retention? And I use those numbers. I basically reverse engineer those numbers to figure out what the ideal price for your amount is. Because if you know that, all you need then is sales velocity. Because you'll know your numbers, you know exactly how many people you need to get in. Next step is just figuring out how to get them. And you have the pricing right, and you can just kind of, you can treat it as a mathematical equation instead of a life or death situation, which takes the emotions out of it and makes it so much easier to deal with.
Mm. Using the framework that you talked about earlier, do you have a way of prioritizing those that you see? I mean, you mentioned the retention is
Mhm.
often the first one or the most important. Is that where you would start on that list?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Uh, and I treat it the same way. Basically, it's going to be, we're going to have to figure out. So if you have a retention issue, we need to figure out what the root cause of it is. And there
Mm-hmm.
could be multiple things, but again, we need to figure out, use the framework, figure out what's going to be the least costly to change first.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, is it the systems? Is it the fulfillment? Is it the people? What is causing this problem? I would say most of the time it does come down to not having a strategic 90-day journey. If someone doesn't have a really good, I can almost guarantee you'll have at least 7% churn or higher if you don't have a pretty detailed out 90-day journey, because
Mm.
almost all of your retention is done in the first 90 days.
Yep.
If you can make someone love you then,
Mm-hmm.
it's so much easier after that. I actually learned that lesson back in grade school with teachers. If you're super nice for half the year, you can get away with so much on the second half of the year. So it just changes the game if you can just make sure you get that piece dialed in. So that's where I always start. From there, it goes into, if it's not the if it's not your systems, then it might be a fulfillment issue. Are your people actually getting the results they should be getting? Do we need to change something there? What expectations are you even setting? Are you promising the world and delivering something like way down here? There's so many different avenues. So it's really individualized based on the person. There's not really like a blanket slate, I can say.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully that kind of narrows it down or helps.
That's perfect. We talk a lot about retention, or churn is kind of the metric that we talk a lot about. Is there a sort of target that you look for when you're helping people? You mentioned 7 being high.
Mhm.
Is there kind of a sweet spot that you look for where you're like, okay, person's probably got a good value proposition?
Yeah, I would say, and it also depends on the business model. If you're using small group and large group coaching,
Mm-hmm.
um, or if you're using open gym access, if your churn's at 7, you're actually doing great if you have open gym access,
Oh, wow.
um,
Interesting.
because they're just people who's coming in paying money to use the facility. Like, it's low ticket, you'll churn
Mm-hmm.
faster.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, it plays to the other factors too, like if you're not closing enough, things like that. But ideally, if you're somewhere in the ballpark of like 3 to 4% churn every month,
Mm-hmm.
then I wouldn't even look at it. I'd be like, okay, we're good, because people are going to leave the gym. It's kind of just a feature. It's not really a bug. Like, it's just the truth. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the industry where you're trying to get people to do things they don't want to do. So it's just part of it. But if you're in that 3 to 4%, there's not really much more juice you can squeeze out of that. And if there's someone out there with like 2% churn, teach me your ways. You're amazing. But outside of that, like, if you're leaning towards that 7%, the 8%, or the industry standard, which is like, I think somewhere in the ballpark of 15% right now.
Wow.
Um,
And that's for in-person coaching?
mhm, yes, I don't know
Wow.
the metrics for online personally, so unfortunately, I can't speak on that.
Yeah, I mean, at Barbell Logic Online Coaching, we have hit stretches of 2%. I would say our probably long-term average is more like 3%, and it seems to fluctuate with, I don't know whether it's macroeconomic or seasonality. You haven't been able to pick like a certain root cause, but we'll just hit these stretches of time where it seems to lock in at different rates. But our best year was under 3%, and I think with fulfillment being what Turnkey Coach focuses on, we're just constantly trying to figure out how to drive the value up with the feedback, the coaching that we're providing, while keeping the cost as low as it can be without driving the value down. That's an interesting part of the equation for us, and something we obviously spend a lot of time talking about. You've got a lot going on. I mean, you've got a podcast, you're writing books, you're building a software platform, you're running a community, you're also running multiple gyms. How do you keep that all balanced, and where are you going with all of these different moving pieces? Like, what's the future for Josh?
The future for Josh is hopefully getting to the point where I'm just kind of the overseer of my gyms. Currently, right now, the only asset I do in the gym is I do the sales. But my goal is to get it where I can step away from any legwork in the gym whatsoever, and just basically 1 to 2 calls a week with a general manager who will basically be in charge of everything on that side. That I would say I'm probably 5 months out from. I'm getting pretty close to that goal. My true passion is going all in on the systems and operations side of things. I want to help as many gym owners as possible. Unfortunately, the truth of the matter is gyms are a passion business. Most people get into this business because they love fitness, and they normally think if I build it, they'll come kind of thing. And I learned a long time ago that no matter how good my gyms are, I can only make such a small little ripple in the actual overall health of everyone. But if I can go out there and stop one more gym from closing because I helped them on the back end and made the business side of things make sense, then every person that gym helps lose weight or get healthier, I assisted to. Even if I keep them open for just 2 more years. Like, that's 2 more years of people losing weight, 2 more years of people getting healthy, 2 more years of a gym owner not like turning gray at age 20, because it can be a very stressful business. And that's really where my heart's going, is trying to help just make the gym industry easier, more accessible for the people who's out there trying to do really amazing things.
Awesome. So if people want to find out more about you or work with you and any of the ventures you've got going on, what's the best way for people to look you up?
I am on all platforms, and I'm super easy to find. My handle is I am Josh.
Like, I literally the letters I am Josh.
I am Josh.
You must have been in like day one of the platform. How did you find those handles?
It's even my gamer tag on Xbox.
That's amazing. Brilliant. I love it. Josh, thank you so much for sharing your insights and wisdom. Tons of super helpful thinking models, those are my favorite, because you can apply them to literally any situation. Really appreciate you taking your time. We actually have a live question. As online coaches, it's impossible not to use a CRM. Okay, it's just a statement. Okay, so Patricia, thank you. Yes, vote for CRMs from the live audience, and I agree. We certainly use one for Barbell Logic and Turnkey Coach as well. And if you are interested in learning more about or to participate or join or get more information about the business coaching workshop, go to turnkey.coach/BOC to get summaries of these if you missed them, or reminders for the ones coming up. We're going to be doing a series on the details of fulfillment with coaching online over the next few weeks, and we'll continue to do interviews as we can get people on. So, Josh, thanks again, and best of luck to you.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks all. We'll see you next time on the Business Coaching Workshop.